With new congressional lines in place, Pennsylvania's 10th district is a popular race for Democrats looking to unseat five-term Republican Scott Perry. And one of those candidates is only 27 years old. Tom Brier is our guest this morning on the Fox 43 Capitol Beat. Thank you. We mentioned the age because it is important. If you're elected, you'd be 28. And the 29 then still would be the youngest person in Congress. How do you get voters to trust someone that young?
So I think my youth is a benefit. And if you go back in history, one of the things I did after the 2016 election is I went back and read a lot about the American Revolution. And what struck me was how young those people were. I mean, James Madison was 25 at the time the Declaration was signed. Alexander Hamilton was 30 when he wrote the Federalist Papers. Jefferson was 32 when he wrote that all men are created equal. And so that youthful idealism, that belief in the future, that the ability to start over and invest in tomorrow, I think is a positive. And I think beyond that, I'm fortunate to have qualifications that allow me to hit the ground running in Congress. And so Governor Tom Ridge just invited me to speak at a cybersecurity conference in Washington. I was the only law student in the country who presented on cybersecurity in front of the FCC. I've published on biotechnology, the Internet of Things, privacy, surveillance. I mean, all these issues that we're talking about today are ones that I've developed an expertise in. And so I think my youth is a positive in that regard.
Do you feel like you need experience to run for office? Does anyone need that political experience to run for Congress?
You know, I think it depends on the person. We look at Governor Wolf, had never held elected office before. The Auditor General is not a CPA. The Attorney General was never in a courtroom. You know, what really matters is whether you care about people and whether you're committed to public service and whether you're prepared to learn and admit when you don't know. And I think if you're willing to do that and put yourself out there and study the issues, then what really matters is how able you are to help working class families, especially here in central Pennsylvania.
Why run for Congress now?
Because we're at an inflection point. 2020 will define our generation. It'll define our future. And if we look at what's going on in this country now, it's unprecedented, the challenges we face. Suicide rates are at the highest they've been since World War II. Life expectancy is in decline for the fourth straight year. Teenage anxiety is up 170%. Pennsylvania has the most opioid deaths per day in the country, and I've lost 3 friends to opioid addiction. The social and moral fabric of our country is unraveling, and I think we've forfeited the luxury of leisure. And so if we don't act now, then I think 10 years from now, we'll be looking at ourselves with regret and asking, you know, could I have done a little bit more? And so it's the reason I left my job. It's the reason I moved back home to go at this full time, because I think our generation is faced with the most important inflection point that we'll see in our lifetimes.
So on your campaign website, you list a handful of what you call priorities, but they're all alphabetized. Here they are. We're going to put you on the spot. You get elected to Congress. What is the first thing that you're attacking in D.C.?
Healthcare. Overwhelmingly for the past 6 months, when I talk to people in the district, it's a concern about affording quality access to healthcare. 40% of Americans can't afford a $400 healthcare bill. And Scott Perry is in there now. I mean, he wrote an op-ed in November of last year promising to protect coverage for pre-existing conditions. And he just voted against the Pre-Existing Conditions Coverage Act of 2019. I mean, it's flagrant deceit. And so one of the ideas that I have is one that Bobby Kennedy proposed in 1968, is to create community resource centers across the district. They would be federally funded but locally staffed and would provide people with resources to primary care, for nutritional plans, for exercise and after-school programs, provide access to child care, provide ways for people to maintain healthy living. And so it's not just the payment model and allowing people to have affordable health care, but it's providing a more healthy lifestyle as well.
So there's a scenario that exists where if you get elected to Congress, someone is getting elected president who believes in Medicare for all. How do you feel about that?
I think it's a good faith argument. I think the essence of the question is how can we provide people with affordable access to health care? And at this point, I'm still talking to as many people in the district as I can before I endorse one payment model over the other. And I think sometimes we miss the boat on how we're focusing on primary care and providing people with access to healthy living. But I think at the very least, it's reforming the ACA, perhaps providing a robust public option, and having a meaningful conversation as to whether Medicare for all is the best option.
You mentioned you're a local guy, Hershey graduate, 2010. The issues that we see in the 10th Congressional District, are they similar to what other parts of the country are experiencing from people that you've talked to? How do the issues that the people that up in the 10th kind of factor into, can you take that and I guess, do what you will in Congress? Is it all universal?
You know, I think there are certain aspects of living in the 10th district that are unique. I mean, here in Pennsylvania, we have the highest student loan rate in the entire country at $38,000 per student. We have the most opioid deaths per day. We have the highest African American unemployment. These are issues that are specific to Pennsylvania and are issues that people here see every single day. And so the solutions to those, I think, apply more broadly to the country. But in central Pennsylvania, we're in a unique situation because the eyes of the country, I think, are on our district. It was the closest congressional race in the entire state in the last cycle. It's going to be one of the closest in the entire country. And I think what happens here will dictate what happens statewide, and what happens in Pennsylvania might dictate what happens nationally.
If you don't win, what do you do? What's next for Tom Brier?
It's going to sound like a political answer. I don't know. You know, I haven't thought about it.
Your eggs are in this basket.
I'm prepared to win. And if it doesn't work out, then that's okay. But what I'm focused on is trying to help people and taking it a day at a time, trying to learn the issues as best I can. And I hope it works out. And if it doesn't, then you go back and reassess and try to find another way to help people.
Why should people vote for you over someone like Eugene DePasquale, who has the experience, has the endorsement of the governor? Why should they take a chance on you?
The question is whether we're going to invest in the future or look backwards. And I think there's a couple of differentiating points between Eugene and I. The first is that, you know, when I announced my candidacy in March, he did an interview saying he didn't even want to run for Congress. You know, and now that I think about it, actually, it makes sense to an extent, because when he was a state rep, he voted for the unconstitutional gerrymandering bill as a Democrat. And
does that matter to you that was 9-10 years ago at this point?
Well, I don't think the timing matters at all, really, because it's a reflection of values. And as a Democrat, disenfranchising millions of Democratic voters, I think, is unacceptable. But beyond that, it really comes down to how we view public service. I'm not taking corporate money. I have an expertise in issues of technology and issues that are tailored to the future. And if we want to overcome these issues and prove to the rest of the country that we're going to invest in new leadership, then I think the time is ripe to invest in the next generation.
Tom Brier, running for the 10th Congressional District, Democrat. Thank you so much. Have to say, played against my brother in high school basketball when my brother was at Susquehanna Township. So that being said he was a good player.
Great player.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Fox 43 Morning News. We'll be right back. Tom, thanks.
Thanks, man.